So yeah, hello, if you listen to this recording, you kind of missed the first 5 minutes, but you didn't really miss anything. You just missed the first slide. Yeah, third slide if you're just listening to this recording. Jump drives. Like I said, uses racial fuel, depending on which race of ship you're flying. Cannot be used in the same solar system, needs a sign-up, essentially. A sinusoidal field, wait, that's a separate slide. No, it might be. Yeah, sinusoidal field, we're gonna take about those in a second. First off, this is also related to the cooldown question that came up earlier. Activating your jump drive requires 75% of your maximum capacitor, or 95% of your maximum capacitor, which is reduced by skills. Each level of jump drive operation is going to reduce the capacitor need by 5%, which gives you that 71.25% level at level 5, which is why you might notice me slipping up and saying 70 or 75% of cap, because, well, realistically, I think every ship that's not a jump freighter that has a jump drive actually needs you to have jump drive operation 5. So realistically, it's going to be 75%, or 71.25%. Yeah, there's also jump drive calibration, which gives you 25% increased jump range per level, which is amazing. And, yeah, if you have a capital, you need this at 4 at least. Or everybody that's ever doing sino chains for you is gonna hate you. Because, well, at level 5, this is a 125% increase. At level 4, it doubles your base jump range. And realistically, base jump ranges are pretty low, especially on Dreadnaughts. If you're in a Dreadnought, you probably want JDC 5. Not saying you need it, but if you don't have it, you should probably tell whoever's doing sino chains. Because a JDC 5 Dread has approximately the same jump range as a JDC 4 carrier. Carriers have a larger jump range. We'll get to that later. But yeah, otherwise you're gonna, to your very, very shock, find out that, oops, I cannot jump that sino because it's not in range. Which can be kind of awkward if you're trying to extract from a combat situation. Kind of. So yeah, JDC, get it? Jump fuel conservation is less important. 10% fuel use per level. Get it to 3 or 4. It's a nice thing to have. Oh yeah, and jump freighters get the jump freighter skill, which reduces their fuel use by 10%. Which they need because jump freighters have a good fuel use to begin with. So yeah, next slide, which I kind of touched on already, Sinos. Sinusoidal field generator 1 is the module. You can fit that to pretty much any ship. It needs a nice bunch of CPU though. If I can actually find the correct ETH client, I can tell you how much. 300 unless I'm mistaken. No, less, 50. Okay. It only takes 50 CPU to fit a sino. I was mistaken. So yeah, you can pretty much fit that to any ship. That's not like an interceptor with warp speed rings or something. Interceptors are notoriously hard to actually fit sinos on because, well, both because you can't really fit the fuel in the cargo hold and because, yeah, they really didn't want you to fit sinos of those. Because probably did. But yeah, when you activate the Sinogen, it's gonna create the Sino beacon. A Sino beacon is visible anywhere in the system on the overview. So anywhere in the system is gonna have the sinusoidal field 1 thingy on the overview and be able to work with that. So that's something to keep in mind. A sino is essentially a big sign saying capitals here, please come kill. The sino ship is also immobile for the duration of the sino, which is 10 minutes. So you probably, when just moving your capital, you want to use disposable ships. Rookie ships are awesome for this. You'll find that most sinos are lit by rookie ships. You can just have an alt-train sino and that's it. And it can actually def-clone itself around. I'll talk about that in a second. I'm just gonna finish up the slide first. Yeah, it uses fuel, 500 liquid ozone per activation. That is reduced by 10% per level of sinusoidal field theory, which gives you 250 liquid ozone at 5, and nobody has 5, so it's realistically going to be 304. Yeah. The 300 number is pretty important because you actually cannot fit 350 liquid ozone into any of the racial rookie ships. However, each racial rookie ship, except the Amar one, which is why you'll never find Amar Cynols, except the Amar one can fit 300 liquid ozone. So at Cyno 4, you can light a Cyno in any of the racial rookie ships, except the Amar one, obviously. And, yeah. Also of note is that just training a new character for Cyno Survival Field Theory 4, just training a new character for Cyno Survival Field Theory 4 does not put you above 900,000 skill points, which is the clone limit for the free alpha clone. So essentially, if you've got a Cyno alt, also called an alpha Cyno because of the clone grade, that has just Cyno 4 trained, you can self-destruct your pod to get around for free and not actually need to upgrade your pod. So you can just undock, just self-destruct the pod, and 2 minutes later you are wherever you set your med clone to. Combined with a corp that has a lot of offices, because you can set your med clone anywhere your corp is an office, can be an amazingly quick way to move your stuff around. XM asks, can you eject from the ship while the Cyno is lit or self-destructed? You cannot eject from the ship while the Cyno is active, but you can self-destruct. So, yeah, self-destructing is faster. You can self-destruct and after 2 minutes you go boom. The beacon also disappears when you self-destruct. So if you're lighting Cynos in deep space, for example, for moving supercaps around, since for a regular cap, we'll get to that in a second, you're always gonna light on the station itself. But for supercaps, since they can't dock, you can actually self-destruct or initiate self-destruct, which gives you that 2 minute countdown. And then at like 9 seconds or 8 seconds left, you can light the Cyno and jump your supercap. And then the self-destruct is going to go off, and a few seconds later, the Cyno beacon is going to disappear again. Which, it still doesn't make it safe, but it makes it safer, certainly. Because you need somebody actually prepared to click warp on the Cyno beacon. It's going to disappear before they notice. After that, moving your cap, yeah, on the slide it's next to moving your cap, which means lighting the Cyno on a station. The goals are obvious. You want to immediately dock your ship. Essentially, you want the ship to arrive within docking range, so you can immediately dock up. Oh, hey, Chitsa.
Hey guys. Basically, if you're gonna want to talk about capitals in W space, I'm here to do that. So just let me know if I'm needed.
Yeah, sure, we can definitely do that. I'm just moving the basics of moving them around.
Yeah,
sure.
We can
definitely do about caps in W space later.
So
yeah. So yeah, you essentially want the ship to land within docking range of the station, so you can immediately dock up. Since traveling capital, it's not easy to take down, but it's not easy to take down for a roaming gang, but if you get there's lots of people that are able to kill your cap if you don't dock it right away. And like I said, sign is a big sign. Here's a capital, please come kill. So yeah, you definitely want it to land in docking range, and you want to prevent it from colliding with the station, because if it collides with the station, it's gonna get bumped off, essentially. And depending on where you bump into the station, this can range from rather slowly, which doesn't really matter, because you can just dock up once your session change expires, because it's not going to bump you fast enough, or to rather fast, which can be dangerous, especially on smaller stations, because it can actually kick you out of docking range. At which point, see my earlier comment about you being acidic dock. It's helpful that the Cyno is kind of easy to predict where you're going to land. You're essentially going to land within exactly 5,000 meters from the Cyno in a random direction. So draw a 5-kilometer sphere around your ship, and that's where your cap is going to end up, somewhere on that sphere. Very helpful in Cyno placement is, funnily enough, a Salvager 1 module. The reason for that is that the Salvager 1 has exactly 5,000 meter range. So if you turn on your tactical overview and hover over the salvager module, it's going to give you that 5,000 meter bubble around your ship that you can just make sure that bubble isn't anywhere near the station model, or at least nowhere where you're going to bump, and is within docking range. And that's your Sino spot. That's where you're going to light the Sino. Then you can just jump the capital to the Sino and dock up immediately and be perfectly safe. Moving a capital in this way is, funnily enough, actually a lot safer than taking gates in a regular ship, since you can just hop the station and immediately dock. However, like I said, if you mess up and bump off, probably a lot of people that want to shine a kill now. Also of note, how easy or hard it is to find a good Sino spot strongly depends on the station you're Sinoing to. Rule of thumb, Galenti ones are typically rather easy to Sino on. Caldari are also good-ish. Amar can be iffy, depends on station. And most Minotaur models are horrible. No, don't ask me why Fruit picked a Minotaur station for the NSC. I do not know. I hate him for that. But yeah, Minotaur stations have a lot of spikes, which makes it rather hard to Sino in on, because you can bump up those spikes. Also relevant is the docking range of the station. Large docking range obviously makes it easier because you can be further away from the station model. Also relevant, where is the undock? For example, there's one of the Galenti models, I think. Might have seen it before, where you undock in the middle of the station. Like this station is this ring, and you come out in the center. That's an amazing model to Sino in on. You can just undock and Sino right away, and it's a perfect spot because you can just land in the middle of that ring, and the entire ring is docking range, so you can just dock up immediately. Which can be important if you're Sinoing somewhere where people are known to kill Sino ships, because then you can't just have the Sino sitting in space, like there's a Sino ship sitting in space, or somebody might just pop it before you can, or when you need the Sino, and that might be awkward. So you need it to be within a reasonable distance of the dock, undock, so you can move to Sino location and sign out right away. So yeah, that's essentially Sino. Not as basic as I had hoped. I talked too much. But yeah, that's Sinos. As always, if I do go on a tangent for too long, please tell me. So yeah. Now we're gonna go to specific capital ships. We're gonna talk about the two actual combat capitals, since, freighters, they jump around, they have a large cargo hold. That's essentially it. Not really gonna talk about those. What we're gonna talk about is carriers and dreadnaughts. Carriers, we're gonna start with carriers. I'm also more knowledgeable, stupid word, about carriers, and I don't actually fly dreads. So I'm completely reliant on what my dread palettes tell me about dreads for this presentation. Carriers, I do know about.
I can talk about dreads if needed, so.
Wonderful. I might defer to you in some points.
Okay.
Especially fading questions, because, like I said, never faded dread before. Carriers. If you've got the slides open, you can see the 4 racial carriers. Top left is the Chimera, that's Caldari. Top right is the Archon, which is Amar. If you're watching the stream, you're also seeing me sitting in station in the Archon. It's a beautiful ship. Bottom left is Minotaur, the Minotaur. And the bottom right is the Galenti Thanatos. So, carriers. Important traits. They've got the largest jump range of any capital. They can have a base jump range of 6.5 light years. All the other capitals have 5 light years. I think Titus have less, I make a mistake. All dreads have 5 light years and super carriers at least. Carriers can, in theory, control 15 drones at once. I say that in theory because, you get the baseline 5 drones from having drones 5. Then you get 5 drones, 1 drone per level of your carrier skill. So if you have carrier 5, you can control 10 drones at all times. And then there's a special module called a drone control unit, although I'll link that on TQ too. This thingy. It's a high slot module. that you can only fit to carriers and supercarriers, and that gives you 1 extra drone per level. Essentially, you can fit up to 5 of those because they need a skill, advanced drone interfacing. Each level of that skill allows you to fit 1 extra drone control unit. So you can have 5 at most. However, they also take up high slots. So they're actually going to make the carrier pretty much useless for everything else because they're taking up all 5 of the high slots. But yeah, you can fit those and have 15 drones. Carriers have a ridiculously large drone bay. They have 80,000 cubic meters of drone bay. That is a lot of drones. I'm not sure how many, but it's a lot. It's somewhere in the 4 or 5 digits of smalls, for example. They can also use unique drones called fighters, which is essentially a small ship that is essentially it's not as small as the other drones. It's actually, I think, cruiser size, or is it frigate size? It's actually larger by a large margin. It's also slower and has damage protection issues against anything smaller than a battleship. So they're rather rarely used. They also have the upside of being able to warp. So if your target warps away, the fighter's going to follow it. So the only way to actually get rid of a fighter chasing you is to leave system or cloak up, I think. Don't think. So you can cloak up or you can leave system. Or dock up, obviously. So that's the only way to get rid of a fighter. But you're not going to see those used too frequently. You can also assign fighters to people, which essentially gives them complete control of the fighter as if it were their drone. It also counts against their drone control limit and yours. So, for example, if you can have like a carrier sitting at a pause shield outside the pause, but like at the edge of the shield. So it can treat defeat it. You cannot use fighters from inside the pause shield. Like at the edge of the shield and assist the fighters, or assign the fighters rather, to people that do not have native drones. Like ships that cannot control drones on their own because they don't have a bandwidth. You can assign 5 fighters to these people and they can help them fight without you actually having to risk the carrier. So that's a thing. They also have an amazing ship maintenance bay, which is 1 million cubic meters. That's a ship maintenance bay, which means it can hold only assembled ships, including fitting and everything. The only restriction is they cannot have anything that's not a charge in their cargo hold, where a charge is anything that can be loaded into a module of any kind. So ammo, nanite paste, all the good stuff. For reference, 1 million cubic meters is 2 battleships or 9 cruisers or somewhere around 55 frigates. So that's a lot. You can actually haul a bunch of stuff around these. Yeah, that's just basic carriers. Next up, we're gonna talk, hold on, this is actually good. We can do a practical on this part. I think I saw at least 1 Dread docking here. X up in fleet if you brought a Dread, please. Okay, 2 Dreads. That's good, yeah. KP sub, I don't see you in local yet. We're in EZA. I can give you a sign up.
System. Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, I can give you a sign up. Are you in 6-Tech?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'm just gonna give you a sign. Okay, if you're in EZA, just dock, and we'll meet at bottom planet at 0. I'm sincerely hoping my stream doesn't crap itself and you people and you can actually follow what's going on.
Titus, did you need another carrier to come out?
Yeah, sure, bring the carrier. We can just hang out in space, it doesn't really matter, and so we don't need to undock every time I decide to do a practical. I don't
very
really
well.
I don't really have a plan for what we're gonna do for the practicals. I'm just gonna show stuff as I talk about it essentially, and we're probably gonna do like a small thing about capital combat tactics that aren't covered in the slides because they're really hard to explain in text because there's a lot of interaction going on. So yeah.
Very well. I just came to offer support if you needed it.
Yeah, sure. just undock and go to Cloud Planet 2. Whoever needed Sino KP7, you can undock in 6 tech. I'm gonna light Sino in a second.
Let me know.
You can undock. Hold on, I'm landing. And
I may need a fleet invite.
Oh, you don't have a fleet invite? Just check Fleet Finder. There's an advert. Okay, Sino's up.
My character wasn't in corporation when this dropped.
Ah, okay. Yeah, sure. I can pull you in.
Appreciate it.
Well, immediately learn something. Wrong type of fuel.
What red do you bring? Just check show
Nag.
info. Oh, Nag. I have no idea which fuel Minotaur uses. Just show info, and I think it's under attributes. Somewhere at the bottom, jump drive systems, and there's jump drive fuel need that tells you the type. Remember to bring Strand, please, if you've got Siege.
Yeah, I just put it full with the Strand instead of the, well, you can guess.
Yeah. Well, you just put it full of Strand, like as many stacks as you can fit, and then just put the rest regular fuel. Regular fuel is really small, size-wise. Oh yeah, this is while we're getting set up, I can just mention this. Carriers have a lot of bays. Can you guys on TQ, can you actually see the base that I'm, or is it too small? Probably it's too small. Can I make these larger? I don't think I can. No. If you can't see that, I'm assuming you can't. The carrier's got the regular cargo hold. The carrier's got a drone bay. It's got a ship maintenance bay, which I mentioned earlier. It can hold assembled ships. It's got a fleet hangar, which you can make accessible to fleet members in space. You can also make the SMB accessible to fleet or corps members in space. So the fleet hangar, you can actually pull stuff out of while in space. Like other people can pull it out, and it's got the fuel bay, which can only hold fuel, which is Strand, which we're going to talk about in a second, and jump fuel, essentially. Okay, we've got a revelation, we've got the Archon, I'm still waiting on that nag. And
3 seconds.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. That's no big deal. I'm just going to do the theory part then. What we're going to talk about is the carrier's specialty module. There we go. There's our nag. The carrier's specialty module. Both the carrier and the Dreadnought, which we're going to talk about later, have a specialty module that only they can fit. And it changes what the ship does. For the carrier, that's the Triage Module. You can see the icon on the slides. You can also recognize the icon on my watching the stream. That's a Triage Module. The Triage Module has a cycle time of 5 minutes. So once you enter Triage, you're stuck in Triage for 5 minutes. The Triage Module also uses fuel, which is the Strand I talked about earlier. Strand. 250 units per cycle, sorry. Minus 25 units per level of tactical logistics reconfiguration, which is the skill you need to use Triage. If you ask me, put Triage either to like 2 or 3 or put it to 5. The difference between 3 and 4 is negligible, and 5 gives you T2 Triage, which is awesome. But training it to just 4 isn't worth it. Just put it to 3 or put it to 5, if you ask me. People might disagree. So yeah, a Triage module is essentially switching the carrier to full logistics mode. It's completely going to disable your propulsion systems. Once I turn this thing off, my maximum speed is going to go to 0 meters per second. I'm going to be completely unable to warp. I'm going to be unable to jump. I'm essentially just sitting there. It also prevents me from receiving any type of remote assistance. That means I cannot be repaired, cannot be energy transferred, cannot be remote sensor boosted, whatever, by anybody anybody anywhere. It also makes me unable to control drones. So I'm going to launch these later. I'm going to show you how they disappear from my drone window. Once I actually activate Triage, just going to disconnect and sit in space. However, it also makes me completely immune to electronic warfare. So, same way as Supercap works, I cannot be webbed, jammed, nuded, I can't be nuded, webbed, jammed, tracking disrupted, sensor damped, very importantly, target painted, I guess. So why you would target paint a capital is beyond me. Essentially any module that gives you the icon at the bottom except nudes. Oh, and I also cannot be pointed while I'm in triage. Now, obviously, I can't warp or can't jump, but points are going to drop off if I'm in triage. Yeah, as you can see, Tallang, or you can at least see the icon, I hope, the DQ people. Yeah, Tallang just pointed me. You can see the point icon. Yeah, just leave the point on. I'm going to show how it drops off. However, the triage module, while it makes you unable to get repairs from anybody else, it also makes you a lot more awesome. What it's going to do is it's going to double the repair amount repairers, well, or shield boosters, if you're that kind of person. And it's also going to have the cycle time of the modules. So while they're going to consume twice as much capacitor, obviously, because you're going to cycle twice as often, they're going to rep 4 times as much. Faye were in EZA at the bottom planet. At 0. Are you bringing a cap, Faye? Yeah, just jump to EZA. You can move me to 6 tag and just jump to EZA. It's next door. Yeah. So, like I said, it makes my local tank very awesome. You probably can't read that. Currently my repairers repair without triage. My repairers repair 10,000 armor per 24 seconds. And as I enter triage, that's gonna change to 20,000 each 12 seconds. So a lot more awesome. It's also gonna make your remote repairs a lot more awesome. They get the same cycle time and amount bonus. So you actually rep twice as much, twice as often. So you rep 4 times as much. You also gain a 900% bonus to scan resolution, which essentially makes you lock everything in a few seconds. Battleships take like 2 seconds, frigates take longer, but it's still like 8 seconds for frigates. I'm not sure on the exact numbers, but it's pretty damn fast. They also increase the number of targets you can have locked. So, plus 4 maximum targets for T1, plus 5 for T2, which gives you 10 targets for, 10 locked targets for T1 triage and 11 locks for T2 triage. For the T2 triage module only, it's also going to reduce the capacitor use of your remote assistance modules by 20%, which is why T2 triage is amazing. And you should get it, if you can. So yeah, that's the triage module. We're just going to show that off for a second. The Dread pallets, if you could just start lightly left-tapping me. Try not to immediately blow me apart. And I'm just going to slow boat within refitting range here. Oh, not going to be needed for my yeah, Desaras, don't rep me, please. I'm just trying to get, just trying to show up the local reps, how the amount changes for triage. Yeah, I've now got the Revelation shooting me, and I think the Nax shooting me too. Yep, Nax shooting me too. Yep, I got 2 Dreads on me. I'm gonna hit armor in a second. Obviously, the Archon's armor tank. It's not that big a deal. Guys, you can siege by the Dreads. You can siege. You don't need to not siege. You can actually do damage. Siege, which I just mentioned, we're going to talk about that later. It's essentially the Dread specialty mode, which makes it do more damage. As you can see, the Dreads don't really do that much damage if they're not in Siege. Now, once the Dreads actually get their target locks on me back, I'm actually going to start taking damage. Just going to start cycling my rappers, because as you can see, these take ages to cycle if you're not in triage. Capital rappers cycle really slowly. Yeah, now I think the Nag just got a lock, and the ref has a lock. So I'm actually going to start taking damage. Now the rapper is going to cycle in a second, which is going to put me a bit higher, but it's not going to rep much. It's going to Yeah, you're gonna see it in a second. Yep, there's a rep cycle. It reps about 5 to 10% of my armor, so I'm not gonna go triage. Yeah, you can see triage modules like green, active. Cycle time is starting to count down, and my reppers are gonna start repping for more. Yeah, my armor just went up, and now the reppers are also on the faster cycle time because, I'm in triage, so they're not starting to cycle faster. And I should hopefully start to stabilize. I think I can tank 2 dreads without having to overheat. I hope, at least. I'm not fully tank fit, but I should be able to, I think. Is the triage module activation instant? Yes. As soon as you click the thing, it consumes 225 strand for me because I have strand 1. I have triage 1, consumes 225 strand, and puts me in triage for 5 minutes. So yeah, I'm about stable-ish against the 2 dreads. I could tank a lot more, but yeah, I'm just kind of stable. Also, you will have noticed that that's dropped off. The module can't be activated on a triage target period. So if you're fast when you exit triage, you can jump out if the opposing fleet isn't paying attention to point you quickly. Obviously only in low sec. If you're bubbled, you're screwed anyway. Yeah, I'm just about holding stable. You can stop us. So we can get on with the class without me having to check that I'm not actually dying over here. I'm just going to wrap back up and go triage ready. So you can see if I turn off the triage module, it obviously flashes red. Obviously, like any module. But I'm still in triage for the next 3 minutes, give or take, judging from the second tab. So I'm essentially sitting duck here. If the target's brought in more DPS than I could tank, I'd need to survive for those remaining 3 minutes before anybody else could rep me. So yeah. I'm going to really quickly touch on the 4 racial carriers and their upsides and downsides. Just to give you a brief overview. First one, what I'm sitting in. The Archon, it's the Amara carrier. It has a bonus to armor resistances. Hold on, I'm just going to link these on PQ too, if I can find the right plan. That's the Archon. That's the Amar one. As you can see, it has a 4% bonus per armor resistances per level, which is awesome because resist bonus. It also gains the carrier range bonus to capital remote capacitor transmitters, or ETs, and capital armor reppers. At carrier 4, which I'm at, that gives me a 49 kilometer range on these. It's, I think, 50-60-ish at 5. That's about the regular carrier. Yeah, that's the bonus on the Archon. It's also really nice to fit. It's got plenty of grid and CPU to fit. Standard carrier fit. Like this, you can probably see my module slots at least. I've got the 2 capital reppers, I've got 2 enams, I've got 3 cap RNAs. I've got the standard 3 armor reppers, 1 ET in the highs. And the triage module, which is a high slot module. I didn't mention that. It's a high slot module. Yeah. It's also generally considered the best armor carrier because, well, like I said, it has the bonus to range on the armor reppers, and it has the resist bonus, which is amazing because resist bonus. I cannot overstate enough how amazing this is. It's essentially a non-DR'd bonus. So at carrier 5, you're taking 20% less damage from everything flat out while in armor. It's that good. Also because the Thani is kind of bad. And the Nidhogg are, well, we're gonna get to that in a second. So yeah, essentially best armor carrier. Also it's beautiful. Next we're gonna get to shield. The Chimera is the Kaldari carrier. It's shield tank. It has the bonus to mirror, where's my PQ if class? There it is. Oh, okay. Desara says to leave, so it's gonna self-destruct this Archon.
I have to leave.
Yeah, sure, no worries. That's gonna be beautiful. Capital ship wrecks are really beautiful. Just saying. So, yeah, we're gonna see that in about a minute. Either once the dreads pop him, or once he has to struck, whichever happens first. On with the class in the meantime. The Chimera is a Kaldari carrier. It has the shield resist bonus, the same way that the Archon has the armor resist bonus. It's essentially quite similar to the Archon, except shield. It has the shield resist bonuses, it has remote ET, and it has remote shield booster range. However, it's not as easy to fit as the Archon. Because shield modules use a lot more CPU than armor modules do. And thus, the Chimera, when fitting it like an Archon, tends to run somewhat into CPU issues. So, Chimera pilots frequently alleviate that by either using Genolutions or using a capacitor implant, or just adapting their fit to not use as much CPU. I've actually seen Chimera fits that use a coprocessor, for what it's worth, which is not something you see often on other ships. So yeah, frequently run into CPU issues. Standard fit is same as the Archon. It's got the triple remote reps. It's got the remote energy transfer. And then it's only got one shield booster and a shield boost amplifier, usually. Because getting 2 shield boosters on it is really hard. Just fitting wise, it's pretty hard to get the 2 shield boosters on it. Pretty much impossible if you want to go with the standard high slots.
It's still, you have to understand that single shield booster gives you about the same much of rep as 2 armor.
Exactly. Shield boosters rep more than armor modules do. And the shield boost amplifier also helps. There's the substitute rep. The Archon rep is beautiful. The EHP per second on the Chimera tends to actually be higher than the Archon, typically. Except that as a shield capital, it's a lot more vulnerable to nuding. The nuding is any carrier's bane, but doubly so for shield capitals. It's still considered the best shield carrier because it has a resist bonus, and resist bonuses are awesome, essentially. Also because the Minotaur is pretty hard to fit for combat use, which is a second shield carrier. Which we're going to get to in a second, but first off we're going to talk about the Thani. Or Thanatos, the Galanti carrier. Its unique bonus, I'm going to link this on TQ again if you can find the client. There we go. That's the Thani. Its unique carrier bonus is to fighter damage, and fighter damage only, not a generic drone damage bonus, just fighters. As I mentioned, fighters kinda have application issues to anything. It's not a battleship. The Thani gets range bonus to armor and shield reppers, both of them, but doesn't get a bonus to capacitor transfer range. It's also got power grid issues that also typically prevent it from fitting a capacitor transmitter at all. So it's typically fit like an Archon except without the ET. So you fit 3 reppers and 3 remote reppers, 2 local reppers. You fit the empty high slot with like a smart bomb or something along those lines. Yeah. It also doesn't have the resist bonus, very importantly. So that makes it a lot easier to kill compared to the Archon, simply because it doesn't have that 20% damage reduction to everything. Yeah, it also doesn't have ET, so it's essentially, it can do both. It can do shield, it can do armor, but it's worse at each than the comparative regular carriers. Next up, or last, is the Minotaur, which is the Minotaur carrier. Gonna link this one again. There we go. That's the Minotaur, that's the Minotaur carrier. Its unique carrier bonus is powerful, but also kind of not, in that it gets unique bonus to capital, remote armor, and remote shield repairer amount, 7.5% per level, which gives it 37.5 at 5, unless my math is off, which it probably is. Oh, it's not, I think. Yeah, it gets that. Then it also gets the same as the Thanatos, it gets the range bonus to both. However, it has fitting issues. And by that I mean it's got issues with fitting local reppers and sufficient remote reppers to actually make use of its bonus, because even bonus, it can usually only fit 2 reppers and local tank. I think I've seen a combination of like armor, local tank, and shield remote reps, or vice versa. That can work, but it's rather niche fitting wise. Also, it obviously doesn't have the resist bonus. Yeah, it has fitting issues. However, it obviously has that remote repair and mount bonus, which makes it awesome for repairing stuff. Well, obviously. So it's really useful for 2 things, essentially. One is what's called suicide triage, essentially repairing with the intention of going down, but saving somebody in the process. For example, if you've got a super capital that's being attacked, and you need to delay its death to allow friendly reinforcements to arrive, Minotaur is good for that, because you can just jump in the Minotaur and it reps more, obviously. It can just fit like a triage module and 4 remote reppers and just jump in and triage and rep the super for what it's worth. You're gonna die, but you're gonna delay its death by more than probably an Archon would. Also, it's very good for repairing structures. For example, if you've got a pause that's reinforced and the guys reinforcing either don't show or you kill them, you still need to rep the pause up to full for it to actually have the reinforcement timer again. And the Minotaur is awesome for that, because like I said, it has the boost amount bonus, which essentially makes the repping faster. Like, nobody likes repping structures, so Minotaur is awesome for that. It sadly doesn't have a structure repping bonus, which would be awesome. So yeah, that's the Minotaur. That's all the 4 carriers for the time being. I'm gonna go to Dreads real quick now. And, yeah, Chit said if I'm doing anything wrong about Dreads, like I said, I'm not good at Dreads, just tell me. Dreads, compared to carriers and their basic traits, are rather simple. They do DPS, and a lot of it. That's kinda all they do. They don't have a ship maintenance bay, they do not have drones, they do not have a fleet hangar, they do not have any of that fancy stuff, they have the default jump range of 5 light years. That's it. They have guns. If you're on the Dreadnought, on the first Dreadnoughts page, from the top left, you've got the Phoenix, which is a Kaldari Dreadnought, which nobody talks about. I'm gonna mention why in a few minutes. It's kinda not a Dreadnought. Guess, somewhat. It's kinda bad. That's understood. On the other hand, the opposite of bad, the Galenti Moros at the top right. In the bottom left, you've got the beautiful vertical Naglfar, which is a Minotaur Dread. And in the bottom right, you've got the Omar Revelation for everybody that likes T1 crystals to be cheap when shooting pauses. And, well, I guess for Dreadnought stuff too. It's not that bad. So yeah, Dreads do a lot of DPS and have a specialty module. I briefly mentioned this earlier when we did the shooting. Dreadnoughts have a siege module that functions a lot like the triage module, actually. It's the same in that it has a 5-minute cycle time, in that it costs strontium to activate, in that it disables propulsion, makes you immune to electronic warfare, and prevents you from receiving remote assistance. It also has the same local tanking bonus, but the triage module gives. It doesn't have a remote repair bonus, obviously. It has a local tank bonus, though. It gives you the double amount. It gives you the half cycle time, same as the triage module. However, it has opposite effects in some regards. For example, where the triage module is focused on resisting others and gives you higher scan resolution, the siege module is obviously focused on doing damage to slow or immobile targets. Siege Module reduces the number of targets you can lock at once. T1 Siege gives you a maximum of 2 targets, period, while T2 Siege gives you 3. It also reduces your scan resolution by 75%, 70% for the T2 Triage again, T2 Siege, sorry. And it also, simply, and this is the important part, it gives you 700% bonus damage, period, on T1. And 840% bonus damage, period, on T2. That means it makes you do 8 times as much damage outright. Which is why Dreads are awesome. Yeah. Oh, and yeah, what Healers mentioned, it drops your currently locked targets when you activate it. So no pre-locking and then going Siege to avoid the scan res bonus penalty. You actually need to lock the stuff while it's Siege. When it cycles, like if you don't turn it off and then turn it back on, but just leave it cycling, after 5 minutes it's gonna reconsume Strunt, obviously, but it's not gonna drop your locks. That part. So it only drops the locks if you initially activate the Siege Module. Yeah, that's Siege Mode. I'm not in a Dread, so I'm not gonna be able to show that off. But earlier, when they were shooting me, if you were watching my HP, as they stopped locking me and then re-locked me up while in Siege, that was why they dropped the target locks, for example. They activated Siege. And once they locked me, you saw my HP drop really quickly. That was the Siege bonus working the way it should. Yeah, that's the Siege module. Essentially. Let me check my DQ point. Any questions? If you have any questions at all, just put it in lecture or put it in fleet. If you're in CC, just put it in fleet. I might not notice in lecture. If you're in TQ, just put it in lecture. If you have any questions at all, I'm gonna answer those as they come up. Be somewhat confusing. Didn't have much time to prepare for this, or I had much time, but I'm lazy. That might be it too. I'm just lazy. So yeah, good. I'm assuming no questions, hopefully. So yeah, that's Dreads basic. But again, we're gonna do a quick overview of the 4 Dreads that there are. Yeah, I'm just gonna quickly do the Phoenix first. The reason it's not really called a Dread. Phoenix has issues in that it cannot apply its full paper DPS to most targets. Its paper DPS isn't bad, don't get me wrong. Its paper DPS is alright. However, it's the way missiles work, the Phoenix's missiles. The way missiles work is that their damage is reduced both by the target's signature radius and by the target's current velocity. And Citadel missiles, which is the capital-sized missile system, have an explosion velocity that means that a carrier moving at the brisk pace of 87.5 meters a second, which is its max speed, is actually going to already start reducing its damage. It can, however, still apply as much damage as the other Dread to immobile targets, for example, capitals, super capitals, posses, etc., etc. However, it's also a shield capital, and yeah, it's simply not that good because of that. Also, it has absolutely no ability to do damage to anything smaller than a capital, which is, well, for most university applications of Dreadnaughts, you're probably gonna be shooting subcapitals, at least some of the time. And why would you drop a Dreadnought that can only apply to capitals if you can just drop a Dreadnought that can apply to subcapitals too? At least with proper support. We'll get to that in a second. So yeah, Dreadnoughts, that's why the Phoenix is not really mentioned that often, and it's kind of bad. To be honest, the Phoenix gets a lot more flack than it deserves when applying to proper targets, which is capitals and structures, and it's actually not that bad. But, yeah. Subcapitals, it's kind of bad. That's all there is to it. Now, on to better Dreadnaughts. Galente Moros has blasters. And, well, blasters are, for a reason, known as the damage system, weapon system with the highest damage. The Moros, in keeping with that tradition, has the highest paper DPS of all Dreadnaughts. The Moros and its blasters also has good tracking, relatively, by Dreadnought standards. We're going to talk about that in a second. But it allows you to apply damage to sub-capital easier. However, it also has downsides, obviously. It has blasters, which means it's a fixed damage type of kinetic and thermal, which is important because it allows your target to refit for specific resists against these damage types. It also has issues against subcaps with its optimal range, because against capital targets you can use tracking computers with optimal range scripts if needed to help with that. Against subcaps you're going to need them with a tracking speed script, so you're not going to have those. And with that, it can only apply to 12 kilometers plus 25 fall-off, which is lower than the other Dreads. Its tank is also average. Yeah, just average for Dread. Most importantly, fixed damage type is really annoying. If you've got only Moros shooting you in a carrier, that's only I can say from the carrier point of view. If you've got only Moros shooting you, it's a lot easier than if you have Nags shooting you. Because with the Moros, you can just stack kinetic and thermal resistance. And to the point where you can tank like 5 or 6 Moros at once easily. Without even overheating. Or being cap unstable. But yeah, refitting and comment, we're going to talk about that later. For the time being, next up is the Morgred Dreadnought, the Revelation. As opposed to the Moros, it has an easier time applying DPS to larger ranges. Also because you can fast swap crystals and lasers. So you can instantly change between the different ranges as needed. Whereas for the Moros, you'd need to go through a reload first. It also has one more low slot than the Moros. Which is nice to have because it gives you an extra DPS or damage module or an extra tank module, depending on what's needed. However, on the other side, it also has downsides in that it has lasers, which is even worse than the Moros in that it gives you a fixed damage type of EM and thermal, which is natively resisted by armor ships, which is to be honest, armor capitals are far more used than shield capitals for various reasons. But it's also a thing with most people used armor capitals back when the shield capitals had other issues that are since fixed, but people still prefer armor capitals because they've always done that. There's also valid reasons for prefer armor capitals. For what it's worth, Revelation has a fixed damage type that is natively resisted by armor caps, which is obviously an issue. Its guns are also really capacitor heavy, in that they use a lot of capacitor as their lasers, which makes it rather vulnerable to nukes, even more so than the Moros. It also has only 4 mid slots, whereas the Moros has 5, so you cannot really do your standard tracking dread fit of SIBO, 2 cap boosters, and 2 tracking computers, because, well, that's 5 slots. You've only got 4. So you either need to drop 1 tracking computer, which hurts your tracking even more, because the Rev doesn't have the awesome tracking with Moros, and or you drop a cap booster, which makes you very vulnerable to nuding. Or you drop the SIBO, which really makes your lock times a lot slower. It also has a noticeably lower DPS than the Moros, which is of course also offset by its projection. It's better at projecting damage to long ranges. Well, last one we're going to talk about is Minotaur Dread, the Naglfar. I'm just gonna, if you're watching the stream, this is a Naglfar. It's beautiful. It's also vertical, which makes it beautiful. It's the Minotaur Dread. Thus, obviously, it uses projectile weapons, which do not use capacitor. So you can actually shoot in a Dreadnought, in a Naglfar, even if you're completely dry on cap. projectile weapons can also change the damage type they do by switching between ammo, which makes it awesome for being really unpredictable when you're trying to specifically tank against the damage. It also has 6 mids and 6 lows, unless I'm mistaken. Yeah, 6 mids, 6 lows, which means you can either armor tank or shield tank it. And both have advantages and disadvantages, obviously. Armor tank, you've only got 6 low slots, so you'd either need to drop a damage module or reduce your tank compared to the other Dreads. However, it also has the 6 mid slots, which is awesome because you can get like 3 tracking computers, 2 cap boosters, and a SIBO or 2 SIBOs, 1 cap booster, some reference thingy. But yeah, it's good for that. Shield tank, on the other hand, has amazing EHP per second. I mentioned this earlier, but shield capitals actually get more EHP per second than their armor counterparts. However, shield slots are also shield modules are a lot more vulnerable to nuding. It also has the 6 low slots in that case, which means you can fit a lot of damage modules. The other Reds have, actually need to armor tank, so they need to use some slots for tank. While the shield mag can just use all 6 slots for damage modules, or 5 slots if you've got a damage control. On the other hand, the artillery version of the Naglfar has tracking issues against subcapitals. Now, RT nags have the best alpha damage you can get. So, like, if you're trying to kill, I don't know, a Bastion Marauder or something, like, you can drop 2 or 3 nags that it's not moving and can just RT it off the field immediately, completely bypassing the reps. On the other hand, if the target's moving, the RT are gonna have a very hard time tracking.
Also,
autocannons don't have.
If I could intervene, if you're talking about Naglfar, there are, specific fits which are basically called Swaglifar, which is, Dead Space fit, Naglfar, which can tank about, 6 to 7 Dreadnaughts, basically, and still kill them. So it means that though Naglfars are very susceptible to the cap pressure, they can still apply the DPS, and they are super awesome at tanking stuff if they don't get nuded. So that's basically it.
Yeah, obviously. And also, RDs have tracking issues. Autocannons don't, especially since you have the extra tracking computers. I'm gonna have a table for that. Slide or two. And, also autocannons have less DPS than the other Dreads. Or at least less DPS than the Moros, obviously. But yeah, nags are awesome. And vertical, which makes them awesome. If you're actually reading the slides, I've got a table for Blab Dreads. A Blab Dread, I probably mentioned this for the first time. A Blab Dread is a Dreadnought that is designed to hit subcapitals. Essentially, you use it as a big swatting tool to just kill stuff quickly, or subcapitals quickly. It needs proper support, but it also needs specific modules in that it needs a lot of tracking computers. Since Dreadnaughts use capital weapons, which are not designed to hit subcapitals in their base state, so you need a lot of tracking improvement to actually hit the subcapital. Now, in this table, it just has like the DPS and the alpha and stuff of the different Dreads. I think everybody can read numbers, so I'm just gonna explain the rows real quick. Paper DPS is obvious, paper alpha is obvious too. Projected 2 is the range of the short range ammo. SIG resolution is just a baseline 2 kilometers for all capital weapons. Essentially, the smaller your target signature is compared to your signature resolution, the lower your actual track would be. Then there's baseline tracking, which is what tracking you get without any tracking computers of enhancers. As you can see, the Moros and the Naglfar are better in that regard than the Revelation, especially the autocannon Naglfar. Then you've got improved tracking, which is with the tracking modules. The Moros gets 2 tracking computers, 2 tracking enhancers, since it has the fewer low slots than the Rev. The Rev gets 2 tracking computers, 1 enhancer, and this is just like me EFE warrioring, so that might be off. Just saying, I don't have any practical experience with threads. The Naglfar has the 6 mids, so if you armor tank it, it can get 3 trackers, which gives it the best improved tracking of all the dreads. And however, DPS is obviously lower, so the Moros might still beat it. I'm not sure, but they're rather close. The Rev, on the other hand, has kind of worse tracking and worse DPS, so it's not that good at lap dread stuff. RT Naglfar obviously has the most tracking by far, because it has artilleries to begin with. However, it gets that ridiculous 76,000 alpha. If you can actually manage to apply that to a subcapital, if you have like 2 of these, you can pretty much one-shot anything. It's not a very tank battleship. Yeah. Like I said, you need proper support to apply these. So obviously you need to make your target slow, since if the subcapital is moving at its maximum speed, even if it's a battleship, it's going to negate a lot of the Dreadnaughts' damage output to tracking issues. So what you want is first off, you obviously want to reduce the target speed, which is done by, webbing it, obviously. Each web is 60% velocity reduction. If it's not a bonus web. And I'm being told by my dread pilots that webs don't work because they are too short range and you need to actually get to the target. So instead you use ranged bonus webs, which are awesome.
That's not true.
Okay. Then my dread pilots are bad and I can call them out for that.
Well, basically, there are two kinds of webs you want to use in any kind of a Dreadnought fight. If you want to blab stuff, you want to use Loki's or, any kind of a long-range webs. And also you want to use the short-range webs as well. So in a fleet fight, it kind of differs. First, it means you want to slow down the target, but if, the target is like close range, and if you have the close range webbing ships, and if you can, slow them down a lot, then that's a good thing. Then you can blab them as well.
Obviously, okay, because if they're closer, they're gonna have more transversal relative to the dread. So yeah, you've got the range bonus webs in one hand then, which is, the E-War frigates can apply it. Minotaur ones are bonused for webbing range. Also target painting, which is going to be relevant in a second. The Hyena, which is the Minotaur E-War frigate, gets 200% web range. The Loki, which is the Tech 3 cruiser, gets 150% web range at subsystem skill 5. The Recons, the Hugin and the Rapier, get 300% web range each. And also notable, the Balgorn gets 100% web range. It's not its primary role, it's more of a nuding ship, but if it has like 1 or 2 webs, it can help out. And, like Chitsa said, it's, if you want the short-range webs, that are more powerful, you're gonna look toward the, are those the Serpentis? I think it's the Serpentis, the pirate ships. So, I think that's the faction. I'm not sure, actually. I think it's Serpentis. So the Daredevil, the Vigilant, and the Vindicator, in order of frigate, cruiser, battleship. And also the, whichever their faction with the newts is. I think it's Blood Raiders.
Ashimu as well.
Yeah, exactly. The one with the newts except the battleship. So, I think it's Blood Raiders. So, Kruor is the frigate and Ashimu is the cruiser. Both of those also get the, web velocity bonus. And, essentially they give you 10% bonus to the velocity factor of webs per level. So if you've got the respective frigate/cruiser/battleship skill to 5, you get 90% web, which is incredibly powerful. One of those is equivalent to 4 regular webs. 2 of those are impossible to reach with regular webs. And awesome for getting dreads to hit the stuff. Also awesome for getting dreads to hit the stuff are target painters. As I said, dreads have the base 200 kilometer, 2,000 meter or 2 kilometer signature resolution on the weapon, which is going to reduce their effective tracking against anything that has a signature below 2,000 meters. So, what do you do to increase the target signature radius? Well, you target paint it. And for that, you have bonus target painters on some ships. In this case, the Minotaur Evor frigates, which is the T1 Vigil and the T2 Hyena, all get the target painter bonus, and Evor cruisers, which is the Bellicose and the 2 Recons, Hugin and Rapier, get the SIG bonus, which gives you, I think, plus 50-ish% signature at 5 per painter. Obviously diminishing returns, but still it's pretty good. If you have like 3 painters, you're gonna make your red life a lot easier to track stuff.
Well, like if I could intervene again, like it doesn't really matter if you have a target painter on the bonus ship or not on the bonus ship. Any kind of target painter, if you're like in any frigate or cruiser, it helps a lot for Dreadnaughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, obviously, any painter is good. The bonus ones obviously are better if you don't have them. Regular painters work just fine. Also, you might have noticed the Hugin and the Rapier have both bonuses. So they're pretty good at helping dreads. They're also rather easy to kill, though. Both of them are rather squishy. And, the Loki is good because it's a T3, which gives it a lot of tank for its small signature. The Hyena is good because I'm being told you can 10M an afterburner that thing and still have the webs. Which makes it really hard to lock down. And well, if you're in a capital fight, you might actually probably have Balgorns, so those can have long webs too, I guess. Shorter range than the others, so they might have issues applying them to subcaps. That's Blab Dread support. Dreads are also used for for escalated sleeper sides and performance, but I think we're gonna let Chisa do that later. I'm just gonna really quick do the last 2 slides I've got myself, and then we're gonna let Chisa do the talking for a bit, and then I'm gonna do some showing capital tactics off 101. Since I'm already streaming, so I might as well. So for capital warfare. And I cannot actually show this right now because my second carrier left. Combat refitting. What for subcapitals doesn't really happen if you don't have capital support, as you can't do it in space without depots. For capitals, it's really important. If you are within I think it's 2.5 kilometers, somewhere along those lines, off a ship that has fitting service and is in your fleet or corporation, you can use the ship to refit your own ship's modules in space. Now, the carrier has that. Orcas have it too. Rockwells have it, I think. And Supercabs have it. Both Supercarriers and Titans have it. You cannot use your own fitting service for reference. So a carrier needs a second carrier or other fitting service ship in range to refit. But in most capital engagement, you're going to have at least one friendly carrier. And if it's in range, you can refit off that. For purposes of the demonstration, I'm going to use a mobile depot. You should always have mobile depots in capitals. Simply because exactly that. Also, mobile depots are really easy to kill. So if your opposition's on the ball, they can just blap the depot and make it impossible to refit off of that. So it's not really reliable, but it's better than nothing. And well, it's good for me to show up refitting in this case, since I don't have a second carrier. Obviously, Dreads don't have a fitting service. They only have damage output. So you need a second carrier to refit your carrier, or you need a carrier if you're in a Dread. Like I said, very important part of piloting capital, because for capitals, dying is not a matter of dying before reps land, at least not in any engagement you're going to get into in the uni. But it's more about your tank holding in the long term. And that allows you to actually refit and adjust your resistances on the fly to suit the damage you're taking. For example, if I'm in my carrier and I'm not getting shot actively, I'm just repairing the fleet. What I'm going to do, you can see me refitting here if you're watching the stream. I'm going to do a refit like this. I'm just going to replace all my hardeners with cap power relays to give me maximum capacitor recharge. And just rep like that. And for example, if we were to get shot, this is where the damage type comes in. For example, if I had like a bunch of Morrises shooting me, I do something like this. And just go for full kinetic and thermal hardeners. So I can reduce the Morrises damage as much as possible. Stuff like that. You get the idea, essentially. So that's adjusting your tank, or how much you tank. Obviously, the more in a carrier, the more low slots you switch from capacitor modules to tank, the less capacitor stable or the faster your cap essentially goes dry, even if you're not on a cap pressure. So balancing that is really important. And well, obviously, if you're in triage and you are to the point where you cannot tank the incoming DPS of the target or the targets, your primary goal is probably going to be to survive for the remainder of your active triage cycle. Because once you actually leave triage, you can then get remote repairs from friendly carriers that are not as dead as you are, or not as dying as you are. And get repairs from others that can top you back off before you go back to triage. Or not going to triage at all if you took structure damage and don't think you could survive another cycle, etc., etc. But that's more a tactical concern for your capability. But your primary goal would be to survive the triage cycle, and properly refitting to maximize the damage resistance without capping out is a very important part of that. Also important to mention, sub-capital modules are rather small, so you can have plenty of spares. And if you're taking, for example, lots of damage, you can just overheat your hardeners, and as they burn out, you can just toss them off and replace them with new ones, and re-overheat those. Just make sure you don't burn out your reppers, because those are capital sized, and you can like put 2 of those in the fleet hangar, technically, but that would mean you couldn't fit anything else in there. So carrying spares of capital modules is a lot harder. Try not to burn those out. Also for Dreadnaughts, now that you can overheat tracking computers, that can be really helpful. You can overheat your TCs to track stuff, and if they burn out, just switch them. Toss new ones in, refit to new ones, and keep overheating. Also really important if you're trying to extract. Like I mentioned, if you're in low sec and your position doesn't have heavy detectors, then they cannot have warp disruptors on you while you are in triage. So, or in siege, if you're a dread. To keep you locked down, they need to then, what's called spamming their points. They need to spam activate the warp disruptor module until it actually works, so that they immediately get a warp disruption on you as you exit triage. If they don't do that, and you manage to exit triage at above 71% capacitor, you can just immediately extract by jumping to a friendly silo that's prepared. And just laugh them as you moonwalk out, essentially. To help with that, you can switch your low slots to warp core stabilizers to shrug off more points of warp disruption before you can no longer jump out. So that way, if you've only got like two opponents that are paying attention and point you, and you have enough warp core stabilizers, you can just ignore their points and still jump out. It essentially makes it more likely for you to be able to jump out as triage ends or siege ends. Also really important, and that's a module you hardly ever see. Actually, we're going to have a second slide on that, how it exactly works. But reinforced bulkheads. That's a low slot module that increases your maximum structure, and it's amazing on capitals. We're going to talk about why later. Also important to note, if you're in a carrier, your fleet mates can refit off of you. And they can also access your fleet hangar in space, so they can refit from the fleet hangar. So it pays off to have important spare modules in the fleet hangar for them to use. For example, a very useful thing to have is smart bombs. So your battleships can refit to fill a smart bombing role in during the fight. For example, to clear off fighters or fighter bombers or clear drones, etc. Also very important, energy neutralizers if you don't have dedicated nuking ships. And sinos. Having spare sinos can always help. You can never have too many sinos in the Now, back to the bulkhead thing I mentioned. This is also the last slide. Bulkhead thing. Reinforced bulkheads increase your structure HP. They give you 25% per module. However, importantly, they are not subjective to diminishing returns, and they do stack multiplicatively. So that means every bulkhead you add gives you another 25% of your structure. So the first one gives you essentially 25% bonus. The second one then gives you 25% more of the 125% you already have, etc., etc. If you have 6 bulks, you get about triple structure. 7 bulks gives you about 4 times as much structure. Essentially, bulkheads are awesome. And the reason I mention that is because a bulkhead, if you fit it in combat, combat refitting, it not only increases your current structure, but it also increases your remaining structure. Because ship HP is stored in terms of how much damage have you already taken. So if you increase your maximum, it's also going to increase your remaining structure. What that means is if you're taking too much damage to tank the damage being taken, we can actually show that off. Ref pilots, can you go siege green and start shooting me? It's going to take you a while to break through my armor anyway. I'm just going to unfit the hardeners so you can do it quicker. See, I just unfit all my hardeners so the Dreads can put me to structure quicker. So I can shoot this off. And this is amazing. You're gonna see it in action. The way it's gonna work is it's gonna look as if I'm repairing my structure, though I'm obviously not. And it's like I said, the amount of bulkheads that you can fit. For example, the Archon, you've only got 4 slots for bulkheads. You can technically eject the capital mods. I'm gonna do that in a second. You can technically do that. If I find something, I can just toss that. Okay. Just gonna jet can this and use the can to unfit my capital modules. Now, obviously, the capital modules, I can't fit those in cargo since they're too large. So I can just fit them in a cargo container. Okay, as you can see, the Dreads hurt me a lot if I don't have any resistance modules. I'm gonna enter structure in a second. And I've already preemptively activated my damage control module, so I get 60% omni resistance to my structure. In this scenario, we're assuming that, for example, I'm like 30 seconds from exiting triage. Okay, I'm hitting structure, as you can see. And now what I'm doing is I'm fitting bulkheads. And my structure is going to go back up. And the more bulkheads I fit, the faster my structure is going to start climbing. So more. They're still shooting me, but the structure is actually going up instead of that. Now, obviously, this is a limit. Once I hit all bulkheads that I can fit, I'm obviously not going to be able to bulkhead anymore. But I've now got 655,000 structure in total. For reference, I've got about 170 without bulkheads, so I would already be dead if I hadn't fit for bulkheads. Yeah, guys, just keep shooting, put me to like 20% structure or so. And also important to note is that you can actually have negative maximums, negative remaining structure without your ship exploding from it. I'm gonna show that off in a second. I'm just gonna wait for me to drop it. Yeah, okay, guys, that's enough. You can stop shooting now. so I can not explode when I unfit one bulkhead. So I can actually have the rep backup since I don't have a second carrier in this case. Now, in any other case, I would now be coasting out of triage. I would be out of triage, and my friendly carriers would start repairing me. In this case, obviously, I gotta repair myself since, my friendly carrier kind of bailed. So yeah, as I unfit, my structure is gonna drop again. Not like 8% structure. I'm gonna fit my wrappers back. One wrapper. Why isn't it? Oh yeah, that's just a bug. You cannot actually drag modules from a can to your hotbar to fit them for some reason. It's odd. You also cannot drag them from your fleet hangar for some reason. So I'm just going to wrap back up now. And then I'm going to show you a negative structure. I'm just going to make sure I have some armor buffer first. And in that, negative structure will not actually kill your ship. As long as you have some armor remaining, it will not kill your ship. So now I can unfit my bulkheads. As you can see, I've currently got, why is it not showing the percentages? Where is that stupid toggle? Display radar. There we are. I've now got 18% structure right now. I'm going to unfit my bulkheads. And what's going to happen is it's going to put me in negative structure. And I've now got, I think it's showing 0 for me. And it's going to show negative structure for the dreads though. Dreads, if you check your target logs, how much structure do I have? Just hover over the circle. It should tell you the percentage. I think it should be somewhere around negative 150% structure. So.
Mine is 101. Yeah,
okay. Well, that works too. Yeah, I didn't go all the way to 0. So yeah, 101% structure in negative structure. I'm at 0 structure, but as long as I've got armor and shield remaining, I'm not going to explode. Now, obviously, if I were to once again dip into structure, I would immediately explode. So this is kind of one-time save thing. That can be really amazing for that, because it essentially gives the target dreads another 600,000 EHP to burn through 60% armor resists. So in that regard, it's pretty good. And a pretty handy trick to have. So reinforced bulkheads should always be a module you carry in your cargo hold. A very important part of being a carrier. You should always have spare modules, or a dread for that matter. You should always have spare modules to refit to. Have spare modules for the burned out modules, have spare utility modules, have sinos, have different types of hardeners, cap recharge modules, warp core stabilizers, all that stuff. I have capacitor boosters in here. I've also got the depot. I've currently launched that. So carrying spare modules is as important as carrying fitted modules if you're in a cabin. Just gonna refit for tank here. A bit paranoid. So yeah, that's bulkheads. That's a beautiful thing. And that's essentially me reaching the end of the lecture thing that I kind of had planned out. So yeah, now since Cheetah was nice enough to volunteer for this, I'm gonna let him do his capitals in W space thing, and I'm just gonna do listening myself. After that, or before that actually, let's do a quick check. Any questions so far? At all? It's kind of silent, so I'm almost afraid that I've scared people off. What can we find a training plan for a carrier? Oh, can I link the bulkheads? Yeah, sure, I can link the bulkhead. Where can we find a training plan for a carrier? The E-UNI doesn't have any preset training plans for carriers, sorry. What are you gonna want? You're gonna want jump skills. You're gonna want jump skills, a JDC4 if you're a carrier. You're gonna want, jump fuel configuration like 3 or 4. Operation 5 is a requirement anyway. And
it kind of actually depends on what you want to do with the carrier. Do you want to move the carrier? Do you want to triage that carrier?
What are you trying to do with the carrier? If you just want to move it around, well, you're gonna need jump skills since they're required for the carrier to actually sit in it. if you just want to move it around, that's all you need. You need to be able to sit in the carrier.
Okay, I'm just gonna do a short presentation on the, how V capitals fit in W space. So there's kind of a huge difference between, how you use, capitals in W space and how you use capitals in, normal space. For first, if you join the alliance or the corporation, or you create the corporation in W space, it means you can't really jump out of W space because there are no sinos in W space. But the way the capitals are useful in W space is you can actually do the PvE stuff in W space with carriers and dreadnaughts. So why is that? Why is not our space so useful? Well, it is simple because in W space these PvE entities or sleepers have so much HP, and they have quite a resemblance to the actual battleships. So when you warp your dreadnaughts, it means your Lokis or your other living ships can bed them down and you can kill them. And it is about 30 to 40 ISK per battleship. It means you can get decent payouts and stuff like that. And if you look at the kill boards, like in Zkill or ETHkill, you will notice that most of the capital losses or kills are happening in W space. That is due to simple reason because capitals are actually used in W space for farming or for PvP or for anything else, even for closing normals. So if you actually are interested in using your dreadnought or carrier, you are gonna probably use it in W space the most often. If you're interested in using it nullsec, you're gonna probably need to join a kind of biggish nullsec corporation or the alliance. If you are interested in using it in lowsec, yes, you can do that. It's going to be useful, but it's also going to be once in a week. So here's my promo talk.